the more you add before the proportions are correct, the harder it's going to be to fix. Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I'll be sharing insights about how to capture proportions effectively and how simplification can be used to make your drawing much stronger. This video features part of a lesson from my Art of Proportions video series, which you can watch for free on my Patreon by using the link in the description below to activate your 7-day free trial. And now, let's dive in. Proportions, the most important skill in all of visual arts, arguably, because all the other skills need to be built on this skill. Let's say you have amazing colors, but you need to know where to put them. If you can't control your proportions, your amazing colors are going to go to waste. Let's say you have an amazing idea for a design and you're doing this family commission, but you don't have control of your proportions and the dog gets cropped out. Sadness, right? So a lot of us are building all these beautiful skills that we want to cast into our artistic discipline, but proportions, are kind of the ceiling, right? All your other skills, no matter how high they are, right, they can only really be showcased to the degree of your proportions control. It's kind of like a bar that is set on your artwork that the higher you push it, right, and it can be pushed infinitely high, right? Of course, you can always improve endlessly at proportions and really at any other skill, but the higher you push this skill, the higher all your other skills are going to be able to be showcased within any one of your artworks, right? So it's a very, very, very important skill. And in order to motivate yourself to practice it more and more frequently, because we all know that sometimes it can require motivation to practice this essential element, just remember that it's always something that will show up in your artwork and allow you to express your additional abilities, right? So though we are only going to be talking about proportions in this workshop, this is really a general, efficiency building, effectiveness building for your broader art practice. So proportions, what is it? Oh my goodness. Proportions, think about it like this. Figuring out the proportions is basically discovering the relationships between shapes. That's all it is, right? Because we're not dealing with relationships of light and dark. We're not talking about values, right? That's not part of the subject. We're not talking about edges, smooth transition, textural effects. All these other aspects that can be part of the craft of drawing are simply not on the table. So what remains is just the most important essential issue of shapes and their relationship to each other, right? How does this shape relate to this shape in terms of location? This shape is lower on the page by this amount. What kind of angles exist between that shape and that shape? They are at a 45-degree angle from each other. What is the relationship in terms of their sizes? This shape is twice as big as that shape, right? Very important to understand that that the craft that we're dealing with is discerning the relationships of shapes to each other within your artwork, right? Because one of the major mistakes that people make is they look into their field of vision, whether it be life that they're drawing from or a photograph or whatever your reference may be, and they think they are measuring or estimating the sizes of shapes over there, right? What's the size of the foot over there? What's the size of the hand over there? And what results from this error is you may have a beautiful hand measured nicely and a beautiful foot measured nicely and a beautiful head measured nicely. But if the relationship between them is off, which is the main proportion deficits of essentially every artist who has proportion deficits to some extent, right, is that individual elements are usually done well, but the relationship between them is completely broken, right? Here's a beautiful eye. Wow. Here's an even more beautiful eye, but they're too close together. Problem, right? That's a major problem because essentially that means that one of those eyes is going to have to move, and that means it's going to have to be completely redone, right? So the thing about proportions that we really need to understand is it's not the shapes in themselves, but the relationship between them that creates a harmonious proportion structure into which you can cast additional information. Now, what is the best tool for capturing shapes? We're talking about shapes as our primary area of interest. Of course, the best thing you can use is line, right? A line is something that divides two shapes, right? Here's where one shape ends and another shape begins. So you have a border between them that we call a line. Historically, it's been the most effective way to do it because lines are easy to move, right? You can capture proportion in marks, cover an area with charcoal and manipulate my proportions this way and that way when the values are already in effect, but it's way harder because erasing a line and redoing the line doesn't take much toll out of me in terms of time, doesn't take much toll on the paper in terms of the paper doesn't get overworked when I'm just moving lines around. And it also doesn't have a massive burden on my attention span, right? When I'm working with everything at the same time, have values and edges and shapes and everything is happening together. I'm trying to fix the shapes, but I end up messing up the value and I end up destroying some other transition. It's just all very chaotic. The reason why lines are very, very popular device for capturing shapes is because it keeps it simple. We're focusing on one thing. This is the optimized way to capture that one thing. And it's easy to move around until it's correct. Because I can't tell you how many times, there's just an uncountable number of times, where I go around class and I talk about some kind of proportion issue, and then underneath that proportion issue, I say, and it would have been easier to fix this if you haven't gone into values yet, if you haven't started making this dark, if you haven't started putting colors in, because the more you add before the proportions are correct, the harder it's going to be to fix. And by all means, I suggest if you're working on proportions, you're better off working in line until you and yourself come together in this forum and they say, and both of you say to yourselves, that works. These proportions work. I have now earned the ability to move on to the more fun things of making dark, lights, transitions, all those other fun things. So this is why lines are ideal. Now, it's also important to understand that because a line is a border between two shapes, if a line is wrong in any way, whether it's by the location that is wrong or the angle that is wrong, it means both shapes on both sides of this line are wrong, right? If I have two shapes with a line that divides them, which is every line divides the paper into 2 and 4 and whatever, right? On the two sides of every line exist two shapes. And if that line is wrong, both shapes are incorrect. So whenever you're thinking about how can I fix a line, it's really important to look at both sides of that line, because sometimes there could be a really tempting, easy choice to fix one shape on the left side of the line, but on the other side of the line, you may be causing an even bigger issue. So it has to always be whatever correction you choose. When you're trying to choose the right correction for the issue that you're dealing with, it will always be the correction that fixes both sides of the line, right? That's by definition. So when we're working on proportions, why would we use the figure, right? Why is it so common to use the human figure as a reference, most of the times without clothes or mostly without clothes, right? This is a decision that has been common throughout art history since forever, right? And if you think analytically about what the reason may be for this being such a common practice, it is because when we're practicing proportions, it is the best way for us to come into contact with our natural ability to critique our work. Let me explain. If I'm practicing proportions on a lemon and the lemon turns out too wide, do I mind? Not really. There could be wide lemons. It's fine, right? Like, what if my lemon is a little too tall? my ability to critique that is really low level, right? If I'm drawing a landscape and I draw the tree too tall, there could be tall trees. It's really hard to judge. Maybe it's even better for the artwork. If I draw the house too wide, hard to judge because there can be just a wider house. But if I draw the shoulder too wide, we're all cringing, right? If I draw the foot too big, it's hard to look at it, right? If I draw the eyes crooked, oh my God, that's really painful, right? What you need to understand is that these mistakes that happen on the figure are not, they're not conceptually different from the mistakes that we make when we draw the figure. It's just that the figures makes them more apparent. They become clear to us because we as humans are really sensitive to images of other humans. And we're able to judge when something's wrong with a person because we're biologically endowed with this ability to know when somebody's shoulder is wrong. We say, hey, maybe you should go see a doctor, right? I think something's wrong with the location of your shoulder. It looks unhealthy, right? We are biologically conditioned to feel wrong when some human body's proportions look off. It throws us off in a way that we can and should leverage towards our drawing skills, right? It's very important to understand that every animal has this in some form or another, right? Zebras can tell zebras apart. Zebras can read themselves like barcodes, right? We can't. They all look pretty much the same to us. Zebras, lemons, we don't know. We don't have this analytical built-in biological advantage. But with the figure, whenever you walk around the classroom and you see people drawing the figure, take note of what your mind is telling you, because you're going to be able to walk around all your 10 peers and say, shoulder here's wrong, foot here feels off, this head's too big. You're naturally able to do that with other people's work, especially when the figure is involved. So this is the reason why the figure is so ingrained into the learning of precise drawing and precise painting, because the degree of precision that we're able to bring to the canvas because of our biological precondition is just much higher than the precision that we can bring to drawing a lemon. With lemons and landscapes, we're too forgiving because they aren't us, right? And that's why they are far less advantageous when it comes to learning precise measurements. When it comes to learning about the color yellow, lemons are way more ideal than people, right? So I'm a big still life practitioner. I will never be down on still life. It's just really important to understand that every kind of practice, right, whether it be in drawing or in painting, is more well suited to practicing different elements of the craft, right? So if I want to practice a really wide color range, yeah, maybe I'll put a lemon next to a tomato, next to a blue vase, and I can explore areas of my palette that the figure will never allow me to, right? So it's not that the figure is best for everything, but it is the best for proportions. Now, why, if we chose the figure, didn't we choose just photos of people, and instead I chose to go with the drawing book, the famous drawing book, Bargues' famous drawing book? The reason is Bargues, in his great wisdom, was a fantastic painter and an amazing art educator in 19th century France. And what he did with his the lithographs that he made for his pupils to copy is he already created them in a way that is simplified, but simplified not in an arbitrary way, but rather in a way that is tailored for future success in the arts, right? When we look at the world is full of stuff, so many stuff. And in drawing, in drawing and in painting, we can't always express all these stuff all at the same time. So every stage of our work is essentially, to some extent, a process of editing and of focus. What's important now, right? I have this blank paper, there's nothing on it. What am I starting with? Is it the fingernails? Probably not. That's not the ideal way to start, right? So at every stage of the process, you can only do so much. And that's why learning to edit and focus and simplify is incredibly important, because you want to start simple and precise and gradually build in complexity into your artwork. So these references by Barg that were meant to be copied by students like us, right, are optimized towards teaching us how to simplify, how to see life more simply, in order for the future stages of our drawing to fall neatly on top of this simplified structure. So here's the metaphor that I want you guys to visualize as you're working on it. When you're copying Barg, and really when you're copying any kind of master painting, what you're doing is you're installing a filter, an application of a filter in your mind. This, we can call it the Barg filter. And then next time you go to draw from life, you're going to look at a model, and the reality that's presented to you is, oh my God, this is so complex. There's just no way that I can draw all this. I'm so scared. I should go home. But instead, you click, let me turn on this filter. Let me turn on this Barg filter, this application that I've installed. And you click, and suddenly you see life through the prism of Barg. You want to just imagine, oh, hold on. If Barg was standing right here in front of me, he wouldn't see all this complexity. He would really see it in a simplified way that's actually doable. So how would he see it? Click. And you want to be able to render in your imagination, right, what's in front of you in simple terms, in simplified terms. And specifically through the simplified terms of master painters who know how to simplify, because there's a good simplify and there's a bad simplify. So the reason that we copy any master artwork, and in this particular exercise, copying Barg's figure sketches, is because it should go towards teaching us how to look at life through that vantage point ourselves, right? I spent about 5 months copying Barg. Before those 5 months, let me tell you, it was so hard for me to draw from life. I was just failing relentlessly. This is 2010 when I just started painting school. And after 5 months of copying Barg, I was able to sit in front of a model and just see it through that lens. Just see everything in front of me as if it was done by Barg. And that was way easier to draw, because obviously that's the goal that Barg had. So in terms of the tools that we're going to be using to draw, super straightforward, right? We have charcoal, we have an eraser, and we have another eraser. My charcoal, sharpened to a tip on one side, right? I'm lifting it up because the recorded camera is actually higher than the computer, right? So live people can see this, recording can see that, right? Sharpened to a tip on one end. You do this by simply rubbing the charcoal against some sandpaper or regular paper or whatever. You can get these kinds of, you see, sandpaper in box form, really, really easy and common object. So you want to sharpen your charcoal to a tip, not on all ends, but basically, like, think about it like the blade of a sword, right? It's like that. And if you don't have charcoal, or you don't want to be working in charcoal, you can do these exercises in pencil. That's fine. Charcoal is a little more difficult to use. And in my opinion, just broadly, a more useful drawing tool than pencil for painters. So it's a great opportunity to use it whenever there's a kind of exercise that is not artistically consequential, right? If you mess this up, it's not like a commission or a gallery piece. This is just an exercise that we're using to build our skills. So whenever this kind of opportunity comes up, it's good to get some charcoal experience, because it's just overall a more useful tool. And now for the measuring supplies that we're going to be using. So really just a skewer, right? Just a skewer that we can use as a reference for angles. A plumb line, which is anything tied to a string, really, that can provide an objective vertical line. And then there's going to be one more tool that I'll introduce in the latter part of the lesson in terms of the use that it has. But it is a mirror. Any kind of mirror will do. Okay? So these are the tools, and soon I'm going to show you how they are put to action. Can anybody spot a tool that's really noticeably missing from this arsenal of tools? Maybe Emily can notice, or Konstantin can notice.
I'm going to say you're not using a ruler or a, oh my gosh.
Somebody said it. I
Where's
see it. Aaron. Viewfinder.
Viewfinder.
Right?
That's what I was trying to do with my, I blinked.
Usually, the viewfinder is an incredibly essential tool that I use in order to capture proportions, right? Because when for those of you who've been watching the other workshops, then you know that, at least for me, the viewfinder is super essential because you start with some predetermined, artistically created, selected frame, that decision of what's going to be the size of this painting. It's going to be like this, it's going to be like that, it's going to be like this. And then the first stages of my work are really derived from that viewfinder, saying how much space do I want around the figure. So I'm so conditioned to organizing my proportional assemblage based on my frame, based on some objective, predetermined, creatively selected series of proportions, right? And so we don't have that because Barg didn't have that, because he didn't give us a frame. These drawings are not framed in any way, but there still must be a way to capture these proportions without the viewfinder. So I want to show you how he does that, and how we will do that, and how he probably did that. So let's say that what we would like to draw today is some kind of arrangement of shapes, an amazing arrangement, really, of a circle underneath a square and then a triangle. If I have this in front of me, let's say I want to draw it much larger, right? What I would do is I would pick a kind of objective metric that's easy to replicate in any size. Usually, the best choice is either the longest vertical you can find, or one of the longer verticals that you can find, or one of the longer horizontals that you can find, depending on what kind of visual phenomena you see in front of you. So our phenomena is vertical, and so is our figure arrangement. And the longest vertical that I can find that is extremely tempting is the following, right? So let's say this vertical is a very tempting vertical to choose, right? To basically tell me what's going on here in terms of how these shapes relate to this line. Pardon the imprecision, really, because this is not where precision is going to be judged. Let's put it this way. Let's say I want to now draw it much bigger, like this, right? So the first vertical line that I put down is not measured from the object. It is merely an artistic decision, because I can draw anything, or I should be able to draw anything in any size, right? So this first decision is not measured, it's just decided, right? And so I can then say, oh, where is this point and where is that point? Oh, it's almost thirds. So I can recreate that here and here to give myself a kind of benchmark of where these things are happening. And then based on this predetermined, artistically created reference point, right, I can draw sorry, this is like literally with the computer, not so easy to recreate, but you understand the idea, right? I can create this thing again at a larger size, right? Based on the divisions that I've made along my longest vertical, right? So let's say now I wanted to draw it smaller than the original, right? So just this size, right? So again, I would do the following thing. I would find some kind of proportional division that's easy to discover, like roughly thirds, right? And of course, this can be corrected and amended. This is just your first minute of work. And based on those parameters, lo and behold, we can create that same arrangement smaller. So in this instance, this objective vertical works like a viewfinder because it tells me that's the size you want to draw. From that size that I want to draw, as long as I find some kind of useful division, right, then I can make sure that the drawing comes out the right size that I am intending. It's critical that when you're working on proportion, you're not at the whim of luck. The drawing will be some size, whatever, right? No, we want to be in full control. I want to draw it 8.5 inches, and that's my artistic decision. So you want to find some line that is the longest line that will dictate where your drawing starts and where your drawing ends. And you can put that onto your surface at whatever size you intend to draw in, right? That said, I would say for the purposes of this workshop, right, it would be easier to draw your reference at the size that it's printed. This will just be an easier way for you to measure, especially if you're starting out. If you're starting out, you don't have to draw it in a different size because it will just be harder. So print it as large as you can print it, right? The bigger, the better, because it's easier, right? And then whatever length that line turns out to be, just use that as the size for your drawing, okay? So in my particular case, I printed it on just a standard letter size, which created a red line that is 8.5 inches long, and that's a little small. If you can go bigger than that, that would be better for you. Because the reason that I did that is just for the recording purposes, because I have to work with a camera and all the equipment and all the stuff. So if it was much bigger, it would just be technically more difficult to execute. But for you, if you're not limited by that, then go larger. That would be nicer. And also for this reason, every reference that I've provided, I gave you two options, right? So let's see for a second. So here we go. So on the Patreon post, you will have found just the standard version of the reference, and then the version of the reference with the red line that I thought was most useful to function as our ideal vertical. It doesn't mean that it's the only one. So if you want to do any of these exercises multiple times, you can actually print out the regular reference, right? Just this, and pick different lines. Pick wherever you want to, wherever you think the vertical line is most advantageous, and use your best judgment. I just want to make sure that I explain why I chose to put it here. So the reason I chose to put it here, two reasons, right? One is so it maximizes my vertical aspect, right? It lands close to the top of the head on the left and close to this bottom of the box. So that makes it a really attractive prospect, because it's going to tell me where some useful things are going to need to line up, right? This moment where the chin meets the neck, really useful to know that this is lining up with that same vertical. The fact that this armpit ends on that vertical, also really, really, really useful. And then in terms of a proportional division, this thing is in the middle roughly, right? This equals that, right? So that's how I chose where to put that line, because it gives me all this information that I can already start with, which is better than literally nothing, right? So how would this work when you're working from life? When you're working from life, which this workshop is optimized to help you do, because I believe drawing from life really is the goal, the ideal is where we want to be. So let's say I'm working from life and I think, okay, I need to start from zero. How do I start? So these are the stages, right? I observe life, right? I look at my model, I close one eye, and I move my objective vertical around my field of vision until I find a vertical line that I love. It's like, oh my God, that vertical line is going to be amazing. Then I tell myself why that is. I need to find some reasons. I say, okay, well, first of all, things are lining up in a way that's going to give me useful information. Like the side of the leg is lining up with the side of the neck, Great. This will limit the degree to which I can get completely lost. Excellent. So things are lining up beautifully along this vertical line. Second, I'm identifying some beautiful, clear division that will help me understand how large things need to be. It's like, oh, conveniently enough, with this vertical line, the middle of the line is some really noticeable point, like the belt, right? Whatever it is, or I can divide it neatly into thirds. Doesn't have to be mathematically precise, but just give you an idea of how not to completely get lost doing this. Yeah, and then the third stage, of course, is then to decide how big do I want it on my page. And how big do I want it on my page is my choice. This is not about the model. I can just decide I would like right now a 9.5 inches length of a drawing, and then I just put that line there in the size that I want, make those divisions that I felt would be useful, and then I'm off to the races. Okay, so this is basically all the stuff that happens before you even start measuring individual items in relation to each other. This is how you could, but also how I and many other people draw without a viewfinder. That way you don't need a frame to dictate for you the size of your drawing, and you also don't need to measure angles against the edges of your format because you have an objective vertical line at a predetermined size that is creatively selected, and that provides you information about how things are going to line up vis-a-vis your reference.
We do have a question here from Dave.
Sure. Hi, Dave.
So he's asking, those divisions on a line might be wrong. How do you make sure your base is as accurate as possible? Or is it just to make sure it fits in your page? And I mean the divisions in your own drawing. That's what he said.
The divisions have nothing to do with fitting in the page, right? Let's just get that clear, right? Fitting in the page, one subject. And the way that you make sure that it's fitting in the page is you pick a number that's smaller than your page, right? Your page is 10 inches, you pick 9, it's going to fit, right? Second question is about the divisions, right? What you can do is this, right? This is some two-hand action, right? So, and I'm going to pull back so that both cameras can pick up on it, right? So I'm looking at my figure through my vertical line, and then I take my skewer, I put my finger down somewhere so that I can create an increment, right? Whatever increment you want. And I can measure like this, right? I can essentially create the increment repeating, right? And this is not mathematically foolproof. Nothing is mathematically foolproof, right? Unless you use a ruler, which we are not. And that way I can see, oh, okay, so if I line this up against the vertical line and I pick this increment here that I'm closing off with my finger, right? I can repeat that increment and see whether or not things are lining up in terms of the halfway point, the quarter way point, the third way point, whatever is easiest for you to see. And then another method that I use, which is, is my most street smart way to draw, what I really love doing is after I picked my vertical, I just literally put my skewer right onto that vertical. I usually do this with my hand outstretched like this so that I'm not faking, right? So what I do is this actually. Maybe it would be easier to, I don't know how to, it's like not so easy to demonstrate online, but I'm going to try. So I outstretch my hand like this, and I put the top of the skewer on the head of the figure, right? And the bottom of the top of my finger is the bottom of the figure, right? So whatever size it is in my field of vision, I do this way with my arm outstretched so that I'm not faking anything. I'm not leaving any kind of factor to chance. And then what I do is I take my charcoal and I draw a line at the bottom of my skewer, right? So I have this point here. I'm showing to this camera, right? And to this camera, right? So this is my entire figure in my field of vision. Then I go sideways, right? I'm looking down, right? And I just mark the halfway point and the quarter way points. like this, right? And then I put my finger there again where it was before, and I just line it up again against the figure, right? With my arm again outstretched, so it's the same distance as before. And then what you get is you actually get objective metrics. Based on where your figure is at, you see what lines up with your center, what lines up with your quarter, and what lines up with your other quarter. Okay, and there are many ways of doing that, but that's just my take on it. That's it for now, folks. I hope you found this video useful, and if you'd like to watch the full lesson, which also includes a step-by-step drawing demonstration, feel free to head over to my Patreon, where you can start your 7-day free trial to get access to this complete lesson and to my complete lessons catalog. You can find a link in the description below, where you will also find links to my social media, my newsletter, and of course my in-person school, Goshen Art Academy in New York City. Feel free to let me know in the comments if there are any other subject you want me to cover. And that's it. Thanks for watching. See you next time.